Welcome to There Is Only One Truth, Self-Dev. We are two odd-age punk rockers. Me, Tommy, a Taoist and seeker, and some other guy. He's a personal development coach and creator of the world's first self-help virtual coaching program. My mentor, Tony, that bastard. This podcast is about success, spirituality, and bettering yourself. That's the best way to change the world. And with continued listening, that's what you will do.
Okay, we're back. We're back, mi amigo.
Hey, happy Veterans Day.
Hey, it's our day, man. It's our day, my lovely. We're both veterans,
Yes.
listeners, if you don't know that already. Tommy was a Marine. I was a paratrooper. Although only one of us was a combat soldier. The other guy was,
That's right. Me.
He's revising history. And we made a nice little Facebook Live this morning. But first thing, before I get ahead of that, I just want to say, Tommy,
Mhm.
every day you disappoint me more and more.
Yes, that's what I was going for.
Just wanted to put that out there. Listen, it's like I say, I'm half saint, I'm half devil. Okay, I'm not a masochist, but I may be a sadist. I just probably got a little of both. I'm a guy who likes to have fun, especially psychologically. So if I say something like that, like such an awful thing to say to somebody, and every day you disappoint me more and more, especially someone who you have some kind of close relationship with. You don't even have to be a close relationship, just some decent relationship. That's got to be one of the worst things imaginable to hear. But I think about things like that to say, because that's where I go. It's that punk rocker in me, man, likes to say things to tweet people. But I also like to say, listen, I'm just being a jerk. You don't disappoint me that much. Not daily.
That's a great phrase, though. That is great.
Yeah, and I come up with little psychological phrase and tweaks like that, little nose yoinks that I do. But no, Tommy, you do not disappoint me. I love you, bro. We're doing great things. As a matter of fact, today was the first time ever that we stopped making, Tommy and I was making Facebook Lives daily, and Tommy joined me, and then we were doing it together for quite some time. Today was the first time I ceased making it on my personal account. And now I just broadcast Facebook Live from our podcast Facebook page, which is One Truth. And the Facebook page is called Tommy and Tone, if I'm not mistaken. All right, that's how you find it, using that key, that address, Tommy and Tone. But the name of it is called One Truth, which of course is short for the title of our podcast. It's for the podcast. It's not for Facebook Live. The Facebook Lives we make is just an added bonus, added value, added content, peripheral to this podcast. This podcast is the main thing. But we did that for the first time ever today, coming live from the page, and that was very cool. And now we're going to start promoting it towards our kind of people, not that other kind. And what is our kind of people? Well, people into self-help, people that want to improve themselves. People know that if things are going to change for the better for them, they really have to take it in hand. They have to change themselves. That's what this is about, and there's a number of facets. Read our description, it's all there. But now we're going to start finding those people, our audience, on Facebook. And now we're also going to start doing it for real, the podcast in the bigger internet world, because we just made a new commitment to that. We're going to actually start marketing and putting ad dollars behind that marketing, where we find you people who are really into personal development, into motivation, into spirituality, because you're our audience. You are the kind of people that would like that. People who are not into self-help, they're not going to like this stuff. They don't care. They could care. They couldn't care less. And that's fine. Everybody to each their own. But I will also say that anyone not into self-help truly doesn't know how great they can become. That's what they don't know how great they become. However great they are, they can become much greater if they realized more about self-help. And I say that most people are not into self-help because they're afraid to fail. All right, and they may be great achievers, far more successful than me. But you
Yeah.
know, but to go beyond the successes they've had, you know, and for any sort of overt or visible way, they wouldn't do because they don't want to fail.
They don't realize their potential too. Like, you know, they don't know a lot about themselves either. They haven't explored
Not
their boundaries.
at least not on the level that self-help offers that kind of exploration. I mean, they may have a semblance. I mean, who are we? We're just two guys.
Sure.
We don't have the answers.
Yeah.
We're just seekers ourselves, right? But you know, and it's not for us to judge anybody. So I don't want to make it look like we're judges. We're not. I'm saying that if you're into self-help, you're into your potential and bringing it forth. If you're not, you may be bringing lots of your potential forth, but
Yeah.
there's even more that you haven't tapped into. That's what I'm saying.
Mm. Definitely.
And you know, and we are doing that. We are tapping into our potential in our podcast by growing it. You know, we make new developments all the time. Last week we didn't make a podcast because it was a business crisis with my company. I had to cancel the Kickstarter because we weren't ready. I hadn't made a proper assessment of my company. I make assessments, but not a proper one. The Kickstarter caused me to make a proper one. I was like, whoa, we've got some serious deficiencies. So we aborted. It was a fizzle. It wasn't even a launch, and which was awesome because now it caused me to take true stock of myself and my company and examine and say, whoa, I've got to change this. I've got to fix that. I've got to tweak that. These are things that have got to change for me to get going to where I want to go, for me to go not just to the next level, but to accomplish the goal. And Tommy and I do that with this podcast. And the great thing about it is that when you do it, you experience it. You see, when you make the goal, it's just conceptual. But when you do it, then you find out what the reality is. And it's like, this is it. So when we grow the podcast, we develop the podcast this way or that, and we get to feel how it's like, it's different than how the concept. And when you're there, you can go, wow, we really are growing. It feels great. We've done this. We do this now. We don't do that anymore. We've reached this goal or this metric. And it's wonderful. Isn't it, Tommy?
I love it. I love learning at each step of the way and revising when we need to. And just each podcast is a new learning experience.
Revision is where it's at. That is the necessary thing. That's why I bring up this podcast and the experience of it, and the Auxilium and the Kickstarter for Proficio, the experience of it. They require revision. Everything requires revision as you progress towards a goal, because you'll find that some things aren't working out, or some things need to be changed, or some things have been neglected, some things need to be totally dropped, and some things are totally missing. And you've got to say, okay, you got to take stock and figure out all those things so that you can achieve the goal. Because we have two things: we have concept, things in our head,
Right.
and that's where and that's necessary. Einstein said imagination is the most important thing, and that's how we figure out how to accomplish goals. You know, we imagine what it's going to take. But when we start getting, and then it's quite necessary, it's totally indispensable. But as you start making progress, you find that revision is necessary, because the concept is not reality. That's just
Right.
God's gift to us in our mind, how we get to shape reality. First imagination, and then we find how they work out with the laws that govern us, right? The laws that govern reality. Oh, in this great chaos that we have, there are consistent and dependable laws always in effect that can always be relied on. And the more respect and reverence you have for them, the better you will do in reality. And I'm learning to have a better respect and reverence. Believe me, I am nowhere near being the high priest of reality that I want to be.
I'd like to say something about concepts too. You know, in the past, along with fear of failure, I always thought that if I if I achieved something and it wasn't what I thought it would be in the concept when I conceptualized it, and I'd be let down, that I'm better off not even experiencing it. You know what I mean? And that was a lie I told myself for so long, because I was like, why ruin this perfect idyllic image I have of something in my mind by failing at it? Or what if it doesn't serve me the way I wanted it to? You know what I mean?
It's very
Yeah,
interesting. Why do you think, is that our 10-minute mark, Tommy?
that's our 10-minute marker. Yep.
Why do you think you felt that way or had that thought?
Because then I didn't feel like I would have any grounding in it. Like I would lose. I would always have that to hold on to, that concept, and that concept brought me comfort, because it was just an ideal. It was just this concept that I had in my mind, that if it didn't live up to what it was in my mind, then I would feel let down or disappointed.
What was
And
what was important about that comfort?
it made me feel whole, I think, is the best way I could describe it. It made me
A
always
feeling of
feel like I
wholeness.
had, yeah, I think there
What
was a
what
feeling of wholeness.
what was important about feeling that wholeness?
I identified with it, and it was part of my ego.
So you
But
felt you felt that the feeling of wholeness was
yeah,
who you were or are, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so what was important about feeling who you are
whole.
or whole?
It kept me grounded every day, and I could always look to it and say, oh, that's something I am, or that's something I'm going to do, or that's something I'm going to be, and and I would put it off. Like that was the main thing, was like it kept me procrastinating too. It's like I don't want to go for schooling in that, because what if I fail at it, or what if it's not what I thought it was going to be, and I stop right after I started too, because I'm sure you identify with this, starting things and not finishing them, because they
So
weren't what you thought they'd be.
so now in making this podcast, do you feel
Yep,
grounded?
absolutely.
See that
This is great.
I'm hearing that is very important to you and awesome. So, when you go about things, look for that feeling or that thought of being grounded, and you'll do better with it. Because if you can't find that, you may abandon it. Probably would. So
Yeah,
focus on that grounded feeling in this podcast, and that's because that's important to you, and
right.
and you can keep going. So if you lose
Yeah,
that feeling of being grounded, and that's important to you, your feeling of wholeness, to your identity, then you
yeah,
could easily not finish it. Like you said, you started, but where's
yeah,
that feeling that you wanted, that idea of being grounded? If you don't feel it, you're like, well,
yeah.
I don't want to continue. I don't want
I want
this.
to
I don't want
abort.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want something. I don't want it anymore. So,
It's kind of like a phantom of a feeling too, because it's hard to put into words and it's hard to explain. But I think I did the best I could right now,
no,
and
you did a very good job of
yeah,
it. You
and
really
I think
did
a
a
lot
good.
of people can identify with that. You know,
Well, and I just
which
asked you for some very simple questions to get to it. What's important
yeah,
about that, and that's
yeah,
what we do when we have, the things that we are really beliefs that we're not aware of are the ones that are most control us, and they can be found with digging, if you will, psychological digging, and that
yeah,
we do things because of our value system and our beliefs. Those are what create our personality. Is the core of our personality, and there's other factors certainly, but there's a hierarchical value that's the way we work. And you have just expressed how feeling grounded is very important to you. And if you don't have that feeling, this is contextual, you or it's just a feeling, which is, like you said, it's abstract, it's hard to articulate. you may
Right.
easily abort. You may say, "Oh, I'm out. This is not for me. This is not what I want to do."
Yeah.
So that's it, and it's great to become aware of that, because when you become aware of it, then you're a more of the wielder instead of the wieldee. You
Yeah.
say, okay, all right, because bringing it from the subconscious to the conscious is where it's at.
Hmm.
Becoming conscious. We are both very into Zen, and that's about becoming conscious, right?
Yeah.
Becoming conscious of what? This and that, about more things about the self, whether it be
Yeah.
parts of our ego or parts of our soul, you know. But
Yeah. Absolutely.
both are
The
invaluable.
present moment, the realness and the reality of this present moment. You know.
Speaking of,
Yeah.
speaking of ego, at present moment is that's where the magic is. Speaking of ego, uh, the main theme of today's topic, today's podcast, is inventing problems such as anxiety. Now, what do you think
Mm.
about that statement? Am I being a bold, brazen provocateur by making such a statement, Tommy? What do you think? What do you think
I
about
don't
that?
like. I think that some anxiety. I mean, without getting too into it and looking at it from all the different perspectives, there is anxiety that is created in one's own mind by themselves, but then there's also outside factors that trigger it. Um, so I mean, like, to be devil's advocate, somebody be like, well, my anxiety is real. I have anxiety, and I have reason to be anxious, you know. But then again, there's people that compound that by not by not looking at it for what it really is, and by not being responsible for their own thoughts. Um,
That's
I
a
mean,
quite being
I've done
responsible.
that.
That's a wonderful statement. Being responsible for your own thoughts. However,
Yeah.
thoughts can be very hard to manage, and anxiety
Absolutely.
anxiety is nothing but a fear of the future, of specific things that you think may happen or could happen in the future,
Yeah.
and it comes from the past. But fear of the past is depression, you could say, and but fear of the future is anxiety. Uh,
Yeah.
fear of the present, and fear of the present can be something real or that also imagined. But notice these are all fears. Now we're all uh, we're only born we're born only with two fears. Babies have two fears naturally only: fear of falling and fear of loud noises. That's it. They're not fear of any harm of any. They don't have the fear of harm of a predator like other animals in the wild. Human
Hmm.
babies, infants don't have that. They only have those two fears. And then all the other fears are learned, whether by themselves or instilled in them by their parents or others, but primarily their
Right.
parents. But the fear of something happening in the future that you don't want to happen, right?
Hmm.
That's just anxiety. So I mean, so really being really simplistic, it's don't have that fear, right? Right?
Yeah.
Be courageous, or in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, which is I'm a practitioner of. There's a number of ways to deal with that. Another, and which is NLP, quite frankly, is a form of psychology, but it's a lot of people who have psychology degrees may poo-poo that because they went to years of study, and an NLP certification is nothing like that. You might get it for $1 these days. But the good at it takes years of practice. But also cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is also very useful in dealing with anxiety. And it's just, if you think something's going to happen in the future that's unwanted, you can have anxiety. So really the simple solution is to imagine something else. And dare I say, imagine things working out just the way you'd like them to. Imagine that possibility. And really,
Right.
that's all you've got to do. And that's what we do with as in NLP and CBT in a related way, and whatever other way other psychology deals with. That's what we get to do with clients and patients. We don't have patients in NLP, we have clients. is we get them to see things in the future happening the way they want to happen. And when that happens, you don't have anxiety anymore. You get good feelings, or not, if not that, neutral. You're neutral,
Yeah.
which is great. Neutral is great. Far better than
Great.
fear, right? Far better than nervousness or worry. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to get into the techniques, but there are techniques that are done with hypnosis or in trance or just in conversation that, and I haven't done hypnosis. I've done light trance and conversation, and people have been blown away. How like, wow, I'm not anxious about the future anymore because I had them imagine it working out just the way they do it. My favorite approach to it, or one of my favorites, is using something called timeline therapy, where you have a person, it's best in a light trance. They float out of themselves in the present time and into the future. They float into the future. They see themselves in the anxious event. And is that the 20-minute mark? Thank you.
Yeah.
And then they go slightly ahead of that timeline, turn around, and they watch things working out just the way they want to, and they step into themselves and feel that. Then they float out, and they float back to the past, back into the body, and they carry it with them.
Yeah.
And that's it really quickly. It's very cool. And just imagine that. So in the future, instead of things, the things happening that you're afraid of or not wanting, that you imagine things working out just the way you want it. Now you got to remember.
Right.
You got to remember. You might say, "Oh, Tony, well, it's not going to happen that way." Well, first of all, are you a wizard? You got to have that crystal. You psychic or crystal? I've had some dealings. I'm 55 and I've had a lot of things happen or been in a number of odd situations. and some people would talk shit or whatever about the future, that I should dread it for whatever reason. And I would say, listen, take that crystal ball that you're looking at, examine it closely, pick it up, and then knock yourself on the head with it.
Yeah.
Because your predictions of the future are a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
It's nothing. It's meaningless. All right, unless you're really working towards making something happen, then you've got some empowerment. Otherwise, when you talk about things that's totally out of your control or things that you don't want to happen in the future, get another crystal ball. All right, because the one you got sucks. It sucks.
I find it fascinating that humans, we tend to look at things not working out in the future, or we have that fear and that apprehension instead of, wanting it to work out, or like you had just mentioned, imagining it working out for the better. Like, why do we always default and go to things falling to shit?
Well, I'm naturally negative, and it's taken me a lifetime to become more on the positive side, and it still requires constant gardening, weeding of the negatives out of my mind.
I'm the same way.
And so and people say to me, "Oh, Tony, you're really positive." I'm like, "Well, you just saw me before." I was practically crying every moment, and but it's because things have happened to them, and that imprints on them, and they think that that's the way it's going to be, but that's not true at all. That's not true at all. That's just the past. They confuse the future for the past. You see. Now, it's true that the best way to predict the future is to look to the past. That is true, but that's just a way to predict it, and you can easily change that by taking control of yourself in the present, which is the only time you have control of yourself or anything else. You can't do anything else anytime ever but in the present. Even the anxiety that you have about the future, you're not having that in the future. You're having that right now in the present.
Yeah.
Guess what? There are better things to feel in the present than anxiety. You got to understand that all the 99% of the problems that we have are just between our ears. Okay, that's not really the problem per se, but how we're thinking about that. And in terms of anxiety, you're just thinking about something in the future, and then things not working out the way you want it, or you're just afraid of it. So don't think of it that way, and you won't have it anymore. Now, then you'll say, "Oh yeah, Tony, better, a lot easier said than done." Okay, I didn't say it was easy, but it can be done. You just go about changing it, and guess what? You will change it. because there are lots of people, coaches. I would suggest you go into you contact coaches to do this and not therapists,
Right.
because therapists really, for the most part, focus
Dig
on the
up the past.
past and reconcile. Now, I'm not talking about reconciliation. I'm talking about feeling good about the future. All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's more the realm of coaches. It's indeed, and this is a specialty of NLP and other types of coaching, where you can you change the way you think, so you have a different state, or and you can have a different level of behavior and excellent performance. All right. And you can change, and an excellent performance can easily be from someone who's worrisome and anxious to someone who feels good about the future and is anxious and is not anxious but eager for it. Well, that's a misnomer, by the way. A lot of people like to use, are so used to having some dread about the future that they've converted anxious about the from being having a nervousness about the future to just a feeling about the future. Anxiousness is about is something in the future is going to happen that you don't want to happen, that you're nervous about. So that you should only use it for that, as opposed to eager, which is something where you want to happen. It's good, So so don't be anxious about the future unless you're truly feeling anxiety. And in that case, I'm saying change it. There are a number of ways to do it. There are ways you can do it by yourself, but if it's too hard to do, and it typically is, there are coaches and there are programs to help you think about the future differently. And you got to understand, my friend, this is nothing but your own thinking. That's all it is. It can be hard to manage, but it can be managed. And if you decide to do it, you can change it. You can change the way you think about the future. You can change the way you think about everything. And, I mean,
That's why having goals is so important. Having goals is so important, because that will make you eager. Especially, you set your goals for things that you want, that'll make you feel good, and you'll strive towards doing something. Because when you don't have goals, you're anxious. I know I was.
Yeah,
because
totally.
Life happens to you when you don't have goals.
Right.
You know?
Instead of you happening to life. Absolutely. And I would go so far as, if you have anxiety about the future, here's a goal for you. Here's a goal. Become anxious free. Become a person who feels good about the future, or if that's too much, neutral about it. Make that your goal. All right. And once you have that, then the future's wide open. You can go anywhere else from there. Right? Instead of dreading being, things happening in the future, being okay with them. And that is,
there's nothing you could do about the past. There's nothing you could do about the past, because you could say, oh, well, I've lost so much and this has happened and you don't know how this feels. Well, you know what? I don't know how that feels, but I know how I feel about things I've lost. But it's on you, whoever you are, to, make resolution, to find peace with everything that you've been through, if you want to have a better future.
Humans are a very funny species.
Yeah, they are.
Most of the problems that we had in the past were problems of survival, if not prosperity. But now that civilization has really become, as through technology and other improvements and evolutions, has, survival of the fittest is no longer a thing that affects humans, really, because of things I just mentioned. So humans, because we're intelligent creatures and complex creatures, what so many of us do is we create problems totally unnecessarily. Because we don't know how to use our mind better. To instead of using our mind for more wonderful things, we use it in a negative way to create problems, to create anxiety. And what's anxiety? Just a problem that we created because we had nothing better to do, quite frankly. All right. In the olden times, if a bear was chasing you, you had to get out of his way. Otherwise, you're going to be killed and eaten. All right. Real problem. Real problem.
Yeah.
Now you think that something, you think, forget about the bear. You just think that, if you have a interaction in the public interaction, somebody ask you something, you can't deal with. Well, that's another fear, all right? Maybe agoraphobia or whatever. But something that's crap, that's nothing. You can actually even deal with easily if you just tapped into your resources or learned the skills or did some preparation. That it would be nothing. It would be like it'd be old hat even. So we had nothing.
So strange.
Right, and think about America. Yeah, we are very strange. But America is the land, and I don't say this to offend, is the land of poor fat people. You know what? Before these modern times, poor people were never fat.
Yeah.
Right.
They're starving.
Yeah. That was a luxury of the rich, of the aristocracy. But of course, as things change, and that has a lot to do with food too, but not just being lazy or sedentary. That's the biggest factor, and not moving enough. So problems such as anxiety and so many other problems. Just 30 minutes. Thank you. Just start thinking better. Start thinking better. And if you're having these kind of problems, get help by coaches, self-help books, whatever. Just make a decision to improve and to reach out for help. And you will start doing that in a perfect way.
Feel a lot better.
It doesn't work perfectly, but it does work through a process. How long does the process take? As long as it takes. That's how long it takes. Tommy and I have, I'm going to shift focus now to our next topics. We have a goal deadline of 100 subscribers for our podcast. We're trying to figure on Apple, because we're on like a dozen different platforms, but just on the Apple podcast platform is the main one. We're trying to figure out how to count our subscribers. We don't know how many we have. So we can't figure out if we've reached the goal yet. We put a lot of effort into it, but we will figure it out. But the important thing is that we're working towards the goal, and it feels good. And whatever we lack, we can say, okay, how can we make up for it? How can we improve this? And it's just, when you have a deadline, when you have a goal with the deadline, boy, that's where it's at. I mean, how do you feel about having this 100 subscriber deadline goal? I mean, goal and deadline of November 16th, which is only 5 days away.
Yeah. I don't anticipate that we're going to meet the deadline, but I feel great working towards the goal. It's in the action of learning and doing and trying to reach out, or not trying, but reaching out to more people and asking them, check us out. What do you think? How are you? How's your day? Things like that. It's amazing.
It's a cliche that it's not the destination, it's the journey, but it's so true. It's really in the journey. At the destination, you don't know how you're going to feel, even though that's why you think you do. That's why you're after it. But when you start moving in progress, you will find out how you will feel, and you'll feel wonderful, because that's what humans are. The feelings that we have when we're pursuing something worthwhile is one of the biggest parts of being happy that I can talk about, that I can describe to people. Get a worthwhile goal and start working at it, and you'll find so much happiness in it. Now, happiness is more complex than that, but you'll find a lot of happiness and joy right in there. Okay, but great, and we're working on that. We're gonna let you know how many subscribers we have when we finally figure it out.
Yes.
But right now, I'm gonna go into today's daily passage. I have a paper I just picked up. There's a nice picture of a woman mountain climbing. And there's a wonderful quote here, and here it is. In life, there are efforts and results, and the strength of the effort is measured by the result. Wow. Absolutely. The proof is in the pudding, my friends. All right?
For a minute, wait, I'm going to ask you to read that again in a second,
Sure.
Because when you first did it, you made me think about Borat. You were like, in life.
In life, my friend, there's the goat and there is you. And you can be the goat or you. I love Borat. Okay.
What was it again?
The quote is, in life, there are efforts and results, and the strength of the effort is measured by the result.
Absolutely.
Man, we don't know what it takes to accomplish a thing until we have it gotten there. When we gotten there,
Yeah.
then we can tell you what it takes, and it probably is a lot more than you thought it would take. And people who give up before that, they just they didn't put enough effort in. That's
Yeah.
all. And that's not an indictment. That's just a description. I say that as a NLP practitioner, as a coach. The proof is always in the pudding. If you want to, just like my company Auxilium, we just had a major setback, but that doesn't. I'm not even considering giving up. There's a number of things there. People, there are toes that are stepped on. There's this and that. There's embarrassment. Yeah, okay. And I move on. I press on. Now, if someone couldn't deal with that, that's the end for them. But it's not the end for me. It's a valley for me. That's all. I keep going. It's a hiccup for me. You keep going. You fall down, you get up. And if you don't get up,
Yeah.
you just weren't willing to make the effort. And this is true. This is very common. People get to a point where they're not willing to make more of an effort because they say, oh, this is enough. I don't want to do anymore. And that's when they lose, but not before then. But if you keep on making the effort, you will get there.
Yeah, the end result in the product always it speaks volumes about how much was put into it.
Right.
How
And
much-
we see people being rich, that are rich and famous, but we don't see, what it took for them to get there. And
Right.
it takes a lot. Everybody has a private life. On your private life, you should be putting in massive effort, right, to accomplish your goals, because that's what it takes to get there. And when you've achieved whatever successes, and people will see it. People will see it, but that's what they'll see. They don't see all the effort that maybe they'll see you making some overt efforts, but the efforts that you have to make that are not overt, that it's just in the private times or when you're crying on your own, they don't get to see that. You got to go through that yourself, but you go through it, you keep going, and you will get there.
Yeah.
Any more on that, Tommy?
Well, I just wanted to say that's why I love the making of whatever it may be. Like anything I really like, I'll find a video on YouTube, or whether it's a bonus feature, it's like the making of this
Yeah,
film or the
that's-
making of
that's
this
great.
show.
Yeah,
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 it
that's
really
great.
gets the bones of it.
So I'm going to burn this paper now, and you symbolically,
psyche.
you burn into your psyche. I'll say it one more time. In life, there are efforts and results, and the strength of the effort is measured by the result. Okay, I'm burning the paper it's written on, and you burn it into your psyche. Now I put it into my can, little tin,
Wow.
let it burn. Now it's time for Tommy's Corner. Tommy, what have you
There we
got
go.
for us?
I will be reading from the Tao Te Ching, Ancient Text by Lao Tzu.
Wonderful.
This is passage number 12. The 5 colors blind the eye.
Tommy, let's do it like we did last time. Let's disassemble it as we progress.
Okay. As we progress, okay. The 5 colors blind the eye. The 5 tones deafen the ear. The 5 flavors cloy the palate.
Cloy?
Racing and hunting. Cloy, yeah.
Cloy definition.
Mm-hmm.
Cloy means disgust or sicken someone with an excess of sweetness, richness, or sentiment.
Ah, that's very
Mhm.
important. So is it disgust or sicken someone by an excess? Okay. So
Yeah.
5 senses. No, go back to the beginning. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The 5 colors blind the eye.
Blind. So they're blinded. You're blinded.
Yep.
Go on.
The 5 tones deafen the ear.
Deafen. So this is an audio unwanted. Okay, it's not okay. Unwanted. So blinded, unwanted.
Blind,
Now
deaf.
and now
yeah.
cloy to the mouth, the
The
gustatory.
palate. The palate, yeah.
Cloy, which is the sickens too much. Go and continue.
Racing and hunting madden the mind.
Mad in the mind, racing and hunting, mad in the mind. So here's a very strenuous activity. Maddens
Yeah.
the mind. Go on.
Yeah, it makes you mad. Rare goods tempt men to do wrong.
Rare
Very.
goods tempt men to do wrong. Wow. Okay. So there's sin, temptation and immorality. Go on.
Therefore, the sage takes care of the belly and not the eye. He prefers what is within to what is without. And that's it.
Okay. All right. That is great. So they talk about all these things, the outer, which through our senses, which are detrimental, right? To the eye, to the ear, to the mouth. And then the things that ultimately that are detrimental to the mind, the racing and the hunting, and then about being tempted by things that tempt us, and that we should right, and that we should avoid them because of all those reasons, right? And focus. Well, and then the belly, he said, we need to eat sufficiently, but not to what was the old saying? The stomach was bigger than the eyes are bigger than the stomach.
Your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Yeah.
Right. You don't want to be gluttonous. You don't want to eat more than you don't want to eat to be full. You only want to eat to be satisfied. That is a very important thing. Talking about fat people before, that's an important thing is to think that way. Don't eat to be full. Eat to be satisfied. So eat sufficiently, but not too much. And ultimately, he wrapped it all up. Is this to focus on the things within and not without. And the within, there's the law of correspondence. As with what's going on in the inner world gets represented in our outer world. So if we can manage the inner world really well, then the outer world will be managed well, right? Yep. If we've got problems in inner problems, we're gonna have outer problems.
They'll manifest.
The inside is the most important part. One of the things that I've been a seeker a long time. One of the things I looked into was called aesthetic realism. It was based in Manhattan. We're in New York City, and I checked it out. I checked out the literature, and I went to their place in Manhattan. It was started by a poet, like in the 40s, a New York poet, and very cool stuff. But their basic premise is that we want to see art in the world, and I agree with that. But they say that once you find art in the world, then you can find beauty within yourself. And that to me was like the big disqualifier. I totally disagree with that. And everything I've learned reinforces that my disagreement. And I'm not looking for reinforcement. I'm looking to learn. I have learned that the inside, and just as this passage you just read, the inside is what counts because the inside will be reflected in the outer world, not vice versa. I don't find the beauty in the outer world. They're just objects. The way I feel about them comes from how I feel about myself and the feelings I have internally.
Yeah, it speaks to you, not the other way around. Like they're looking for these aesthetics to build them up instead of them appreciating it from the outside in.
What's the old
inside out?
Inside out. What's the old saying? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Right? Yeah. And everything else. Yeah, there's universal standards of beauty, absolutely. But they're two different things. But inside, the inside part, happiness is an inside job. And the inside, as was just read by Tommy, is most important because that will be manifest on the outside, in your outer world. And you will see things that correspond to your inside and the outer world. So work on the inner world. Absolutely. Okay, Tommy, I think we're at the end. This is another great podcast. We're back, man. Number 12 in the can. Guys, thank you very much. And we'll be making Facebook Lives that are focused on the One Truth page. Look for them. Those will be every day. And we'll be continue to make this weekly, and we thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Love you, Tommy. God bless, man.
Love you too, bro.
Thank you for joining us. Please subscribe, like, and share this with like-minded people. Stick with us. We will continue to improve and persist. You can do it with us.